So one day I was walking down a hallway between all the studios to my classroom, and the TV station producer grabbed me and said, "Listen, I want just like 5 minutes of your time." I said, "What, are you going to film me?" It's like, "Yeah, but I'm not allowed, you know. My teacher said I can't do it." Like, "Oh, come on, you're ready." I said, "I'm not ready." "You're ready." So, of course, I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it. And it's been almost like 8 or 10 months we've been drilling improvs, and learning the Stanislavski's method acting. So I said, okay. So I go into this studio, big studio, lights, cameras, and we're talking about late 60s, early 70s. The equipment is huge. Just lights are gigantic. There's the booth where the director is behind this soundproof glass. So he said, here's, the little poem you need to say, like a half a page poem. I was young. I could memorize things pretty fast. He said, just read it a few times. We'll give you whatever time you need, memorize it, and then we'll be ready to go. He said, just one thing is that it's going to be live. It's not going to be recording. You're going to be live. The whole USSR is going to be watching you. So, and it was some kind of like communist propaganda. I'm a young pioneer with a red scarf, and I'm reading a poem how proud I am to be born in Soviet Union, how wonderful this country is, and how all the capitalist countries just, envy us because we have it so good. Basically, the meaning of that poem. And he said, "You ready?" I said, "I think so." Okay, he said, "Quiet on the set." And as everything went quiet, like here today, no wind, nothing, my heart started beating like crazy. I thought the whole USSR heard the beating of my heart. And he said, "Sound, rolling, camera, speed, action," obviously in Russian. I started saying the poem, and then in the middle of the poem, I forgot. I forgot my lines completely. And the more I thought to remember the lines, the more I would forget them. I thought I would have a heart attack. Blood rushed into my head, and no matter what I did, I just could not remember the next line. And the moment seemed like lasted for a century. Then somehow that next line came to me, and I finished the poem. And he said, "Cut." And I almost like fell down, like unconscious. I thought this was just too much. And he looked at me and he said, "Wow, you did an amazing job. I especially love the pause you did in the middle of the poem. That was brilliant." Uh, it was my very, very first performance in front of the camera. I remember it like it happened yesterday. As I was telling you this story, actually my heart started to beat a little faster because I kind of emerged into that memory. As I walked into the classroom, not right then, I think the next day or the day before, our teacher suddenly looked at me in the beginning of the class, like 2 days later. She said, Afonian. And that's my last name. Everybody in Russia called me by my last name. Nobody called me Alexei. They always, especially if they were mad at me. Afonian. What did I say? You cannot absolutely do. I'm like, what? To be in front of the camera. You're not ready. I don't want you. And she went off her rail. She tore me another butthole, in simpler words. And that kind of like such a high was like followed by punishment and guilt. And it almost became the story of my life. If I enjoy something, then it's followed by some kind of a punishment. Back to the studio. My first film, when we were ready, I I don't think I had to audition for it. The directors and producers would just come to our class and watch our improvs, and then pick a kid. And there was a feature television film that was called "In Search of Grandma, in Search of Grandpa," "К бабушке, к дедушке" in Russian. And it's on YouTube now. And I believe I was 13 years old. I played the leading role. Uh, you can watch it. The director, his name was Zinovieva. She became fairly successful director, television director, I guess. And after that film, and after being in some morning TV shows, there's one called Budilnik. That's in English mean alarm clock. I was almost like, what is his name, Nick McMahon in Johnny Carson show. I'd be just sitting there as a kid. I didn't say, "Here's Johnny." None of that. But there was some kind of host, show host guy, woman, was interviewing like celebrities. And I was, as a kid, just sitting next to it, responding, not saying much, just like Ed McMahon, I guess his name is, in Johnny Carson show. So I was there almost every morning, and we're talking about probably 1970, 1971. And when I went to school, my regular school, I cut a lot of classes, obviously, because I became a full time teenage actor. Um, Kids in school, Jesus, what a difference. After being a wuss, being bullied by bullies, a laughing stock of the school, someone who's terrified of violence, and the kids hated that in me because in Russia you're supposed to be tough, tough Russian, wanting to fight, win the battles. That's what we Russians do. And I was just the opposite. But when I became an actor on television, and mind you, I wasn't a movie star or anything, just, I don't know, almost regular here and there. Uh, they kind of started kissing my ass, worshiping me, super nice to me, teachers as well, principal in school. It completely changed my life and kind of like was tickling my ego. It felt great, I have to admit. It felt really, really good. Then the second film I was in, playing a feature role, was called "Представление начинается," which means the show is about to begin. And my supporting actress name was Tatiana Dogileva, who became a major movie star later. Me, halfway through the shooting the film, we suddenly got permission to leave Soviet Union. And halfway through shooting that film, playing the leading role, I basically disappeared because KGB said to us, "We're letting you leave the Soviet Union, but you can't tell anybody. You're just going to disappear." And that is, well, I was just going to say that's the theme of the next episode, but I'm going to throw something else in. When I came to this country, the United States, I later, much later, I'm talking about 30 years later, I discovered that I have a resentment. And that was, I went to Alcoholics Anonymous program and I started doing the 12 step. And step 4 dealt with your resentments. And after I told my resentments to my sponsor, he said, "There's gotta be resentment that really deep down in you that's really screwing up your life." And suddenly I said, "Yes, there is one." And I gave that resentment a name. I called it Almost Famous, like the movie. And that resentment was when I left the kind of like perfect path to my acting career in Soviet Union. I left in the middle of that film, then and came to this country. What happened was that deep down inside me, my subconscious mind said, "You screwed up." Because I tried to do acting in the US. No way. Nothing. Not even a community Russian theater. Nothing. I tried it 3 times. And that resentment started to sabotaging my success. And that is the theme for another day.